right, algebra, we are at Unit 4, Day 2, writing equations in point-slope form. So our objective is to write an equation using, equation of a line using slope and a point. So this is only when you're given a slope and a point. So previously we were given 2 points and we use slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form, let's refresh our memory, is y equals mx plus b. Okay, and so now for point slope form, we kind of just rearrange this, all right? And we end up solving for our y's, okay? And if you think about it, we just kind of rearrange this, and that these x's are dividing, right? And so if I want to move these x's, this denominator, to the opposite side, I would do the opposite, which is multiplying. So essentially I'm multiplying this right there, right? And if I multiply it to one side, then I multiply it to the other. And that's kind of those cancel. And that's kind of what this looks like. So it's the same thing from the slope, but we rewrite it. And so we write actually y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right. Now the things that we plug in for, so we are going to plug in for y1, right? We're going to plug a number there. We are also going to plug in a number for x1. And if we plug in for these, where do you think we get an x and a y? From the point, right? So we're going to plug in from a point that's going to be given to us. The other thing, and then we plug in is the m, okay? And we plug in the slope. Okay, so we are given the slope, we are given the x and the y, and we plug in and we solve for y here. Okay, let's get to going. Here we go. Let's see. Here we've got the slope, remember, that passes through x and y. So this kind of tells us what it means. We're looking for the difference in x and the difference in y. That's our slope. I'm going to let you pause and read through that, and then I'm going to move on. Okay. So here we're given a point and a slope. So let's just remind ourselves that this is x and that's y, and that m here equals 3, right? They're giving us our slope, they're given x and y. And maybe you even, so you don't make mistakes, you write x equals 4 and y equals -2, okay? So now we're going to use the slope, method 1. So both of these versions work. Okay, so slope-intercept form, let's remind ourselves yesterday, y equals mx plus b. We plugged in y, we plugged in m, we plugged in x, and we solved for b, right? So my y is -2, so we've got -2. I'm trying to write this, y equals mx plus b. Just give myself a little bit more room to work. So -2 equals, my slope is m, my x is 4, plus b, right? So I multiply, -2 equals 12, plus b, and neither of those are negatives to worry about. -12 minus 12, same sign sum, I've got -14 equals b, right? So now I've got my slope is 3 and my y-intercept is -14. So I write y equals 3x minus 14. So I wrote an equation of a line here, right? That's my function. So now here's the second method using point-slope form. So I'm going to use y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now, a lot of times we like to think, students like to think that this is more work, but it's actually pretty much equivalent, because by the time I have to solve for one and rewrite, maybe at first it starts a little more, but it ends up being the same amount of work. So remember, I'm keeping y, and I'm going to plug in for this negative y, for this y to the 1, I mean. Okay, so we'll use this y, right? And I'm subtracting 2. Okay, and that equals, I'm plugging in m, that's 3. I'm keeping my first x, and I'm subtracting my other x that's given to me. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and make sure you understand that. If you don't, go back. So we've plugged in. So if you remember up here, we keep the first y, we plug in for y1. Okay, we equals, we plug in m, we plug in our slope, we keep that x, and we plug in for x1, okay? So now I get to solve for y. So I want it to look just like this. I want to write it in a slope-intercept form. That's how I always write my functions. Now, on a test, if it asks you, write an equation in point-slope form, you would leave it like this. Okay, but we want to write the equation of the line, and I'm going to show you how to get to a point-slope form. Right, so I know I plus those, right? I'm going to go ahead and chop, and I'm going to distribute there. So I've got y plus 2 equals 3x minus 12. Okay. Okay, so now I get to subtract 2. And I'm going to go ahead and plug this over here. Y equals 3x, and same sign sum, negative 14. And I've got the same exact answer. So it actually is a little bit easier. It's less like having to figure out b and plugging it back in. It's kind of nice to use. All right, so let's do that again. And we're just going to use point-slope form. So write an equation of line that passes through point -1, -2. So this is my x, and that's my y. And has a slope of -2/5. So we've got my x, I've got my y, and I've got my slope. Okay, so using point-slope form, I put right here the things that you keep. You keep this first y, and you keep your first x. I've got to plug in a y, an m, and an x. Okay, so my y is -2. Okay, my m is -2/5. And my x is a -1, right? So this is fine, but now that I want to solve it, okay? So y plus 2 equals negative, and I'm going to go ahead and chop this, right? So it's actually x plus 1, and I'm going to distribute that. Okay, so -2/5 x, -2/5 x, and then -2/5 x times 1 is a -2/5. All right, and then we subtract 2, because I want to solve for y, remember? Subtract 2, right? Y equals, I drop my -2/5 x, and same sign sum, so I've got -2 and 2/5. So my slope, -2 and 2/5, and my y-intercept would be -2 and 2/5. Right. Okay, so now if we're given 2 points, and we are not given the y-intercept. So if we look at this, I've got 2 points given to me right there. All right, and again, I'm going to write x and y. I'm going to write x and y. Okay. And again, you know from that day one, when I'm only given 2 points, what can I always do with those 2 points? Am I given 2 points? My first step is always going to be to find the slope. Okay, so it's my change in y over my change in x. Okay. So I'll take, let's take 2 minus -2. Okay, and maybe you take -2 minus 2. Doesn't matter. But I'll go 2 minus -2. Right, so minus a negative makes it positive. And since I went this way, I've got to go this way. 1 minus 3. 1 minus 3. Okay, so I've got 2 plus 2 is 4, and 1 minus 3 is -2. So my slope is -2, right? Because 4 divided by -2 is -2. So now I've got my m equals -2 equals m. I like to make sure that I always know where to find that. So now if I'm using step 2, point-slope form, using the slope in one of those points. So let's remind ourselves, we're doing y minus, and I'm going to plug in a y. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, I like this one easier. It's a lot easier. So y is my 2. So y minus 2, and it's a positive, equals m. And maybe you have to do this. Y minus y equals 1. M times x minus x1. Okay, so we're plugging in for y, x, and m. So y minus, and my slope is -2 times x. I'm keeping that x, and I'm going to subtract the actual x there from the point. Okay, so I need to distribute. So y minus 2 equals negative 2x, and a negative times negative is a positive. And I add 2, and I add 2. Okay, so those cancel. And y equals negative 2x plus 4. Okay, and let's check that. If my plus 4, if my y-intercept, does that look like it's going to intersect at 4? Yep. And I can check my slope. Is my slope negative 2? 1, 2 over 1. 1, 2 over 1. It is. And it is a negative slope, and it's negative. Right? So write a linear function with the values. The function of 4 equals negative 2, and the function of 8 is 4. So remember, this is my x and my y. That's my x, and that's my y. So I'm given 2 points only. So what's my first step? Find the slope, right? And maybe I gotta remind myself that it's the change in x over the change in y. So I'm gonna take 4 minus a negative 2, 4 minus a negative 2, and then 8 minus 4. 4 plus 2 is 6, and 8 minus 4 is 4. And I'm going to reduce that. I'm going to keep it in proper, maybe, probably. We'll see what's easiest to do my work. Okay, so divide by 2, divide by 2. So that's my m, right? That's my slope. Okay, so now using the point slope form. So I need to use point slope. And a way to remember that is we've got, that's a point and slope, point. Okay, points, slope, points. I don't know, maybe that doesn't help you. So I'm going to write this again, y, and I plug in for y1 equals m. I plug in for m times x minus x1. So what I boxed are the things that we're plugging in for, right? So y minus, y minus my points. If I have to take 2/3 of a number, let's use these two. So maybe we avoid the negatives and use those two, but I'll go ahead and use these ones. So I've got plus that negative 2 equals, my slope is 3/2 times x minus my x, 4. Right? And then I go ahead and distribute that. So y plus 2 equals 3/2 x. And if I want to take 3/2 of 4, I cross reduce, that's 1 and 2. 3 times 2 is 6 over 1. Okay, and it's a positive times a negative, so negative 6. And then to solve for y, minus 2 minus 2. Y equals 3/2 x minus 8, same sign sum, and it's a negative. And that's my answer right there. All right, so you should have an assignment on this, on big ideas. Let's make sure, yep, there we go.